Hey guys, welcome back to Base the Main. This video, I'm going to be discussing the potential matchup between Max Holloway versus Justin Gaethje for the BMF belt and why this fight, even though I've heard varying opinions, a lot of fans want this fight, a lot of fans don't want this fight, specifically Max Holloway fans. But regardless of what side you're on, regardless of whether you think this fight makes should happen or not, I think that the fight makes too much sense for it not to happen. And let me explain why. Let's talk a little bit about the landscape of the lightweight division. I mean, we have Charles Oliveira versus Islam Makhachev 2 probably happening sometime next year. A lot of us were kind of expecting that fight to take place sometime early in the year. I mean, Islam Makhachev really took no damage from that Volkanovski fight. Charles Oliveira just had a cut. So, he was going to be able to recover from that cut relatively quickly. So we expected, Charles Oliveira and Islam Makhachev to kind of hash it out early in 2024, maybe February, maybe March, maybe even January. I mean, there was some rumors of Charles Oliveira versus Islam Makhachev 2 taking place at UFC 297 in Canada, but it seems like those rumors weren't true at all, and the UFC came out and said that they were actually making Dricus du Plessis versus Sean Strickland instead. So a lot of us fans were wondering, I mean, when are they going to make that Islam Makhachev versus Charles Oliveira fight? And then Ali, Islam's manager, comes out and says that Islam Makhachev will not be fighting before May, which kind of makes a lot of sense, right? Or either he's going to fight in March or in May because Ramadan takes place from March to April. So that's why when I was discussing UFC 300, I said that it doesn't seem likely that Islam Makhachev versus Charles Oliveira would take place in that card, as much as I would love to see that fight at UFC 300. It just doesn't make sense timing wise for Islam Makhachev, for religious reasons, which I think are absolutely fair. You know what I'm saying? But I was kind of hoping that Islam Makhachev versus Charles Oliveira would be able to fight early in the year, so then we could see maybe Islam Makhachev defending, or if, let's not underestimate Charles Oliveira, but let's assume that Islam Makhachev would win the rematch. I kind of wanted to see Islam Makhachev fight Justin Gaethje sometime mid-2024. So at least, there's a lot of movement in the lightweight division. I mean, we got Arman Tsarukyan versus Beneil Dariush. I think that if Arman Tsarukyan is able to beat Beneil Dariush next Saturday, I think he's earned a title shot in my opinion. I mean, he should probably fight Dustin Poirier next, but the reality is that based on what I've been hearing from Dustin Poirier, it doesn't seem like he wants to fight any contenders. He either wants to have a big fight or a fight that will get him to the title. And I just don't know if that Arman Tsarukyan fight would interest him, even though that's technically what should happen. That's the fight that really should happen. But I think Dustin Poirier is kind of in a weird spot in his career where, he's fought for the title. He's fell short in both those title shots. I mean, he fought Justin Gaethje for the BMF belt. We all knew that the winner of that Justin Gaethje versus Dustin Poirier rematch was most likely going to get a title shot after Charles Oliveira. Dustin Poirier lost that fight by head kick KO. So, he's already had the biggest fights with Conor McGregor. So, Dustin Poirier's in a very interesting career. But regardless, Charles Oliveira versus Islam Makhachev 2 is probably not going to happen until May, June, earliest in my opinion. I hope I'm wrong and it happens sometime in March, but I have a feeling that Charles Oliveira versus Islam Makhachev is going to take place sometime in June, maybe May. And that's a lot of time, guys, because if Islam Makhachev and Charles Oliveira fight in May, that means that Justin Gaethje will not be able to fight for the title. He's not going to be able to fight the winner of that fight until October. So if you do the math, Justin Gaethje's last fight was in July of this year. If he doesn't fight until October of next year, that's going to be a year and 2-3 months. That's a lot of time off. You know what I'm saying? That's a lot of time off. And I kind of understand why Justin Gaethje wouldn't want to fight, any other contenders, especially for the BMF belt, right? So, I mean, who's he going to fight? I mean, knocking out Dustin Poirier earns you a title shot. And then prior to that, he beat Fiziev, which a lot of people were picking to beat Justin Gaethje, including myself. I thought Fiziev was going to be able to beat Justin Gaethje. I mean, Justin Gaethje was coming off that brutal loss to Charles Oliveira. So a lot of us were kind of sleeping on Justin Gaethje in that fight. And Justin Gaethje seems to be making improvements, which is absolutely incredible, guys. So then let's talk about Max Holloway. I mean, Max Holloway has fought Volkanovski 3 times, has come off short, lost. The last fight he had with Volkanovski, he got absolutely dominated. But Max Holloway continues to be that fighter in the featherweight division that just continues to beat everyone in the featherweight division except Alexander Volkanovski. You know what I'm saying? So Max Holloway is also in a very interesting position. I mean, earlier this year, he fought Arnold Allen, was able to defeat this contender in Arnold Allen, very good contender, and then fought the Korean Zombie in a weird fight that probably shouldn't have happened. But it happened anyway, and Max Holloway was able to knock out the Korean Zombie. So it's like, okay, what's next for Max Holloway? Is he going to fight for the title? Is he going to wait to see what happens between Max Holloway, between Ilya Topuria and Alexander Volkanovski? Because let me tell you something, guys. If Volkanovski ends up losing that fight against Topuria, I do believe that the UFC will give him a rematch because of how dominant Volkanovski has been in the featherweight division. And so that kind of puts, Max Holloway in a very interesting spot. I mean, Max Holloway could fight the winner of maybe Allen versus Evloev, but it also makes it kind of weird, right? Because if Evloev beats Allen, like, do you just want to feed these contenders to Max Holloway and then Topuria? Like, who's Topuria going to fight? You know what I'm saying? So that featherweight division is in a very interesting position. I think the lightweight division is also kind of in a weird position as well. And I think the Max Holloway versus Justin Gaethje fight would make sense of all this chaos that's been happening between both divisions. You know what I'm saying? So even though, if you're a big Max Holloway fan, you're like, no, Max Holloway, please stay away from Justin Gaethje. He's going to knock out Max Holloway. And I kind of do agree with that. I think it's a bad fight for Max Holloway. But the reality, if you guys really stop to think about this fight, it makes absolute sense because Justin Gaethje, if he waits until October, that's a long time not fighting. And then Max Holloway is also in a weird position at 145. So it just makes sense for Justin Gaethje versus Max Holloway for the BMF belt in February. If Justin Gaethje is able to beat Max Holloway, which I think most of us are going to pick Justin Gaethje to beat Max Holloway, I mean, that's another great win in your legacy. And I think if Max Holloway ends up winning that fight, I mean, what greater fighter is there to carry the BMF belt than Max Holloway? I mean, Max Holloway is a bad motherfucker. Justin Gaethje is a bad motherfucker. And as much as some people hate the fight stylistically, the reality is that Justin Gaethje versus Max Holloway makes a lot of sense, guys. It makes a lot of sense. And I know a lot of naysayers are going to say, oh, you just want Max Holloway to get killed, blah, blah, blah. They're giving Max Holloway no chance. And I completely understand because Justin Gaethje is improving. This patient Gaethje, maybe sloppy Gaethje. Max Holloway would have a chance of beating sloppy Gaethje. But this new and improved Gaethje, I mean, it's going to be a tough fight for Max Holloway. But I want to see it, guys. I want to see it because I don't want to see Justin Gaethje sit out for more than a year. And like I said, I think Max Holloway is in a weird position because if Volkanovski beats Topuria, I just don't think that Max Holloway versus Volkanovski 4 is that attractive of a fight. And then I think if Topuria ends up winning that fight, I think they're going to give Volkanovski the rematch just purely on the fact that Volkanovski has just been a very dominant champion at 145. So you know what I'm saying? So once you start thinking about the landscape of both divisions and the potential of the matchups, you start to think like, man, like right now is the perfect time to see Max Holloway versus Justin Gaethje, a fight that we kind of never expected to see. I mean, there was rumors of potentially Max Holloway moving up to the lightweight division, especially after that third loss to Alexander Volkanovski. He keeps beating these contenders. And I think for Justin Gaethje, I mean, Justin Gaethje definitely has more to lose, right? Because he's right there at the cusp of a title shot. But Max Holloway also has a lot to lose, man, because this is a very dangerous matchup. So I feel like both these guys have a lot to lose and both have a lot to gain. If Max Holloway is able to beat Justin Gaethje, then Max Holloway is going to fight the winner of Charles Oliveira versus Islam Makhachev, which would be an absolutely incredible fight and incredible for Max Holloway's career. Now, if Justin Gaethje is able to win, then you have somebody like Max Holloway on your resume, and they're probably going to put an amazing fight regardless of how long it lasts. And who knows, maybe Max Holloway is more durable. I mean, the only thing I will say about the matchup that I hope Max Holloway does, I do hope that Max Holloway is able to bulk up properly to the lightweight division, because when he fought Dustin Poirier, that was on short notice. So I kind of hope that Max Holloway is able to properly bulk up to the lightweight division, and it's not just his featherweight version fighting these lightweights. Like, he needs to properly bulk up to the lightweight division, because if he doesn't, just the power difference, especially against someone that's Justin Gaethje, probably one of the hardest hitters at 155. Justin Gaethje can probably knock out welterweights. It's not a good move to come in with your 145 frame and fight someone like Justin Gaethje. But, stylistically, it could be a very interesting fight, in terms of skill, because I think Max Holloway has a lot of volume. We've seen he has a great chin. He's gone 5 rounds. I mean, Justin Gaethje has also gone 5 rounds, but I mean, he's only gone 5 rounds in that Tony Ferguson fight, which he did pretty well, but he was dictating the pace of that fight. If Max Holloway's able to put in the pace on Justin Gaethje, he might be able to pull a decision or maybe a late finish. So who knows? But at the end of the day, I mean, we could go back and forth about the matchup itself. A lot of people are going to pick Justin Gaethje, which I think is very valid, right? I mean, he's looked absolutely incredible, has a lot of power in the lightweight division, and it's definitely a scary fight for Max Holloway. But the point of this video is to say that the reality is that this fight makes too much sense for it not to happen. You know what I'm saying? Regardless of what you think of Max Holloway and his chances against Justin Gaethje, this fight just makes too much sense for it not to happen. Like, I already established that Charles Oliveira versus Islam Makhachev aren't going to fight in the next couple months. They're probably going to fight in May, June, the earliest. And then the winner of that, who knows if they come out with injuries or not, are probably not going to fight until October, November. So Justin Gaethje wouldn't get his title shot until November, at least if he fights in February or March and he's able to beat Max Holloway. That's still enough time for him to recover and then fight the winner of Charles Oliveira versus Islam Makhachev. And if Justin Gaethje is able to get that Max Holloway win, his fight against Charles Oliveira or Islam Makhachev becomes even bigger. You know what I'm saying? So I think Justin Gaethje has a lot more to gain. I do think Max Holloway can lose his durability. That's the scary part about Max Holloway. He could lose his chin, but if Max Holloway loses, and let's say he just loses a decision where he kind of gets beat up for 5 rounds by Justin Gaethje, I mean, he could still come down to the featherweight division, and what I'm saying. So I think it's a great fight. I think it makes a lot of sense. I mean, I see a lot of people saying that this fight shouldn't happen, but I'm telling you, if you guys really stop to think about it, if you really stop to think about the matchup, you start to think about the matchup, it makes too much sense for it not to happen. It makes too much sense for Max Holloway and Justin Gaethje for it to happen, in my opinion. It just makes too much sense, and I do believe that this fight's going to take place. I don't think that Justin Gaethje's manager would come out and call out Max Holloway for February and put a date if that wasn't like in negotiations, if the UFC wasn't actually discussing Justin Gaethje versus Max Holloway. So I think it's a fight that's actually going to happen. I think it's a massive fight. It's an incredible fight. And like I said, I just don't want to see Justin Gaethje sit out for too long. And no, it seems like, if Islam and Charles were actually going to fight in January, like it was originally rumored, then yeah, it probably doesn't make any sense for Justin Gaethje to fight Max Holloway in March, right? Because you should probably just wait to see what happens between Charles and Islam. And then he could fight the winner sometime in, midsummer, maybe late summer, you know what I'm saying? So, but the reality, like I already mentioned, is that Islam Makhachev is most likely not going to fight until May. It's most likely going to be against Charles Oliveira. We'll see how that fight plays out, but it's just going to be too much time from Justin Gaethje's last fight to his potential title shot, which most likely would be at earliest sometime late 2024. So I think the fight between Max Holloway versus Justin Gaethje just makes way too much sense for it not to happen. And I wanted to make a video discussing this fight, guys. Please make sure to comment down below what you think of Max Holloway versus Justin Gaethje. And I know a lot of you guys are going to say, that Max Holloway is going to get absolutely destroyed. And I got to be honest, I'd probably pick Justin Gaethje to finish Max Holloway. But the reality is that the match itself just makes too much sense for it not to happen.